Hey friends, you know that I am all about the new design system and design tool things, and I just found out that zeroheight just released their 2023 version of their How We Document report. They've been releasing that annually. I figured we could just open it up together, see what's inside, and see what the state of documentation holds for the next year. Let's take a look. Well, first up here, we have their fancy schmancy microsite. This is the How We Document second edition, brought to you by zeroheight. This is not a sponsored video or anything like that. This is me just being nosy and curious to see what's going on in the design system space. So cool little microsite here. We can download the full report, which I have that downloaded. But first, let's just see what's on the site here. Last fall, we launched the second edition of our How We Document survey. Cool. I looked through that last year. We're excited to share with you the How We Document 23 report. A few of the report highlights. 518 total respondents. That's a pretty good sample size. So curious to see what's in there. What else we got? Design system experience. Most of our respondents have been working on design systems between 1 and 3 years, 44%. All right. Lots less people have been working for a longer amount of time. So an interesting stat here. A lot of people are I consider this maybe a junior or starting to get into a mid-level range in careers. So a lot of people that responded are a bit earlier in their careers, or at least design system experience. Kind of an interesting fact about this. Cool. What else we got? Design system and teams go beyond designers and developers. Design system teams don't just include designers and developers. Regardless of design system's age, there's at least one PM and one content writer on the team. I'm so encouraged to hear that. I know a lot of design systems start with designers and engineers, but oftentimes grow to be larger than that, and as they should. Any good product can't just survive on a designer and an engineer solely. Even though those are important roles, they do need product management, project management, business analysts, strategists, things like that. So I'm glad to see that that's being reflected in here as well. So we've got here, I guess this makes sense, heavily weighted to design and engineering, especially for the more mature teams. But we see more PMs and content people coming in here. That's really great and encouraging to see. I hope that trend continues. We're not even in the report yet, but this is all good, promising data. I like this. All right, happiness and documentation maturity. Most respondents, 34%, noted their design system documentation was partially mature. About a fifth felt their documentation was mature. When comparing maturity with documentation happiness, we're not surprised with our findings. Those with very mature or mature documentation were overwhelmingly happy. Documentation that wasn't very mature had significant unhappiness. This isn't a surprise to me. I was on a webinar with zeroheight last year to talk about the correlation between documentation and happiness, and honestly, mostly just completion and maturity and happiness. It doesn't surprise me that there's a big correlation between those two. So not surprising again that that trend would be continued the next year here. 5 to 7 tokens is the sweet spot for a design system. I love this. This is so awesome. When I teach design tokens, one of the big things that I teach that takes a lot of people some time to change their minds about is that they should build a small design token system, and just a small design system in general, because they're easier to maintain. They can be very powerful. They follow the sort of Pareto principle, that 80-20 split, that 80% of your tasks could be made up with just 20% of your assets. So design tokens fit into that. Design systems fit into that. I love that this is in here. That's a really great surprise for me to see. 5 to 7 tokens is a sweet spot. So defining 6 types of tokens seems to be the popular choice. And the most popular token combination included borders, colors, radius, shadow, spacing, and typography. No surprises there. That's the common stuff, which I think design systems should be the common stuff. So awesome. Most respondents use between 5 and 7 tokens. Not many just dabble with a few tokens or go all in with over 8 tokens. Love that. I'm curious to see some of the details around that when we open up the report. But awesome. Very, very cool to see. Documentation is great for truth, onboarding, and confidence. Okay, cool. I have some opinions about this source of truth idea. Maybe I'll get into that a little bit later, but I'm really thrilled to see onboarding and confidence in here. I think that's a really important thing to design systems, so let's see what they say about it. We added this question this year to get a sense of people's sentiment. Respondents feel that their current documentation serves as a single source of truth. Okay. Helps with onboarding. Excellent. And informs teammates so that they can do their job confident. I love that. They feel differently about using it as a recruiting tool, where most are neutral or disagree. Interesting. Okay. This is overwhelming to me, so I'm going to skip this. We're going to go past this, and we'll see what is in the report. All right. So cool microsite. I love that there is a very simple way to kind of digest the findings as a whole and overall. Let's see what's in the details of this report, see if there's anything juicy in there. All right, so the details of this report, we see here that it is a 63-page report, so a good chunk of things that we can look into here. We've got the How We Document 2023 report. My face is blocking the brought to you by zeroheight. That's an important thing. Thanks, zeroheight, for making this. All right, maybe my face is on the wrong spot. Let's put it over here. Welcome to 2023. Design system documentation continues to gain momentum every year. How we document is an opportunity to reflect on the changes, blah, blah, blah. Over 500 participated in where we're at to establish where we're at, where we're going, and where we need to be. Very exciting. Okay, who took this survey? Organization, design system team, documentation, and happiness. What I'm interested in seeing through this, just looking at this table of contents, is I don't know. What's my favorite part here? Design system team, that's always interesting to me. Documentation, I'm interested in zeroheight's findings because that's what they do as a company. And then, the correlation between happiness and documentation and maturity level. Yeah, I guess everything in here is pretty interesting. All right, let's roll on. Who took their survey? 72% of disciplines were design and UX. Engineering is separate. Interesting that design ops is split out here as not part of design and UX. I would have expected either way, either that's rolled into design and UX or as a separate thing. But just notice that that's called out here. Product management as a separate discipline makes sense to me. Content as a separate discipline makes sense to me. All right, 518 respondents. All right, let's see what else. Job titles. There were 238 unique job titles from our respondents. Interestingly enough, 16% of the job titles explicitly state design system. This is a question that I get a lot when I teach recently. A lot of people are wondering about the job market in design systems, especially as our industry is having tons of layoffs. People are learning more about design system skills, and a lot of people are asking, are there actual jobs in design systems? A lot of them are not seeing anything anywhere. I've seen a ton, but that might just be because my echo chamber is a design system echo chamber where people are talking about that more and more. But this is a good affirmation of that. 16% of job titles explicitly state design system. I think that's a pretty high proportion there. It's not, in the single digits. I can imagine that that'll get larger and larger as that happens. 77% is within the designer group, which makes sense. It's got the word design in it, as like design systems. Again, engineering makes a lot of sense. I wonder what this other is in here. Product manager makes sense to me. Design ops and content, I can see those growing. I wonder what this other bucket is. I wonder if they'll have more about that later in the report. But lots of good encouragement that 16% of job titles explicitly state design system. That holds pretty well and fares pretty well for a lot of people. Aha, here they are. Design system job titles. Thank you, zeroheight. So within the disciplines in design system designers and leads and product leads and lead design. Okay, all the different permutations here. Operations, so design ops and design system manager, management, product management, engineering. And if I move over here, other roles, design system specialist. That's interesting. I wonder what that role entails. Senior design system analyst. I love this. I love seeing the roles of strategy and business analysts being included in design systems. Again, that just adding to the signal that design systems should be treated like real products. So if a product that you're working on or a feature you're working on is going to have an analyst or strategist on it or writers, why wouldn't a design system? So really encouraged to see that in design system land. Awesome. Professional experience. Okay, we looked at this a little bit earlier, that most people have, what does this say? Most people who completed the survey have been working professionally for over 10 years. That's different than what we saw in the microsite, isn't it? I thought we saw that most people who completed the survey were in this 1 to 3 year mark. All right, let's see what this says a little bit more. That's interesting to me because that's sort of the opposite of what we just saw, but maybe not. Maybe this is what we saw. Most of our respondents have been working on design systems between 1 and 3 years. Wait, that doesn't make sense. How does that? Let's go back. So this previous slide says professional experience 50. Okay. So, all right. I kind of get what this means now. I think what this means is people who took this survey have been in the design or engineering game for 10 plus years, but maybe only have 1 to 3 experience in design systems specifically. Maybe that's the correlation they're trying to make here. So I missed that nuance going forward, but I think that's the case. And if that's the case, that makes sense. I think design systems are a relatively new industry compared to UI design, product design, visual design, product engineering, software engineering. So it makes sense that people that have engineering experience or design experience would then be moving into design systems as a relatively new field. So cool. That makes sense to me if that's accurate. Age doesn't equate to design system experience. All right, that makes sense too. Most people had only 1 to 3 years of design system experience. Most people with 3 to 5 years of experience were 35 to 44-year-olds. One could guess the timing was right in their career. They likely had enough professional experience to explore design systems when it was new. What's encouraging is that regardless of age, most people are relatively new to design systems, so the playing field is pretty even. Again, really great info for people who are just starting out in design systems. Even though you are perhaps competing for spots with people who have a lot of experience in general in the field, just about everyone's new to design systems. So no one really has that much more of a head start over anyone else. Yeah, I agree with what zeroheight is saying here, that's an encouraging thing. Very cool. Women are well represented in design systems. This is excellent. This is one of the things that I really love about design system work, is that from a gender equity perspective, this is what I found to be true across the teams that I've worked with, is that I seem to work with an equal amount of men, or people who represent as men, as well as women, people who represent as women. Interesting here that 2% non-binary, genderqueer, or gender non-conforming. I'd love to see that increase a bit more. I wonder how we make room for more people like that. That's something that is interesting to me and important to me in my work. I wonder if there's anything else in this report about some of those things too. Cool. So gender equity, I'm glad to see this in here. Most roles are dominated by men. So I assume that this means in general over the fields of design and engineering, not specifically design systems. So I think that's what this says. Content 76% women, design and UX 51% men, design ops, engineering, PM, and other. So I guess what that's saying is design systems as a subset has a much more equivalent or much better equity in terms of gender, whereas the larger umbrellas of the disciplines, design, UX, engineering, things like that, are much less equitable in that way. So it means some work to do. Men only slightly outnumber women, and in some levels. And again, okay, so this is from a role perspective: executives, founders and owners, freelancers, individual contributors, managers. These all hover around the 50-60% mark. So very interesting. I'm not sure what this has to do with design systems. I don't know that I have a particular opinion about that, but interesting data in here nonetheless. Ethnic identity isn't very diverse. Yep, that's not surprising as well. A lot of the teams that I've worked with, there are usually only a handful of people in a lot of these particular ethnicities, from Asians to Hispanic, South American, multiracial, Indian, African. Yeah, this tracks to me with the teams that I work with. Oftentimes, I am the person on those teams that is probably this 6% or 1% or 2%. So again, lots of work to do there. I wonder if this report states about whether that is growing or shrinking or holding. I wonder what the trend is there, at least compared to last year's report. I'm not sure if they reported on this last year. So let's see what else we've got. Respondents were overwhelmingly white or European. So, okay, a lot of this is self-selecting too, in that these are really about the respondents, not necessarily about the industry, although I wonder how representative the respondents are of the industry. So curious about that here. All right, your organization. How big is your organization? Most people who replied worked at companies under 100 people. That's surprising to me. I would have guessed that most of the people who responded were in this kind of enterprise size. So interesting that it's sort of the lowest tier here. Design systems tend to be most obvious at enterprises in keeping design at scale managed. So in those 100-person company, I wonder what kind of scale they're working with design. But maybe that's what makes design systems manageable at that size, as opposed to, if you work at a company of 1,000 people, perhaps, a design system is just an overwhelming task and maybe hasn't even got started at that point. In-house or agency, 85% in-house. Okay, that makes sense. I specifically get a lot of people who are asking me from agencies how they build design systems. But I think a lot of that is the fact that I have agency background. I ran my own agency. I worked at a bunch of agencies before. So I think a lot of people maybe look to me to know a little bit more about that particular use case. It does make more sense to me, and a lot of the teams that I work with design systems are in-house teams. Because the need is just so great at an in-house team. You need internal tools, whereas lots of agencies don't have a lot of homegrown internal tools because a lot of the work that they're doing is handed off to their clients and their customers. All right, design org. 54% of people work at design orgs of 1 to 10 people. This is such an interesting trend to me. I'm seeing this a lot in my own work, in that I'm getting a lot of inquiries from people on the smaller team size, maybe because design systems tend to live here, in the 1,000 people orgs, in the big enterprises, or maybe at least got their start, or at least are more popular there and more talked about there, that people at smaller organizations are going, well, how could that kind of work for us? So again, I would be curious to see this trend. The trend line of the people who are responding, are they trending to conversations with smaller and smaller teams, or is this something that is held for a while? I wonder. All right, designers and engineer ratio. So what's this saying? When it comes to designer-engineer ratio, the ratio grows with organization size. The increase is fairly steady, but jumps significantly with organizations over 1,000 employees. So organization size, for every one designer, there are this many engineers. So for organizations that have about 50 people or less, there's about 1 designer to every 4 engineers. For organizations that have 100, there's 1 designer to 7 engineers. Okay, I see how that goes. For every 1 designer at a 500-person company. So the larger the company, the more the ratio of 1 designer to more people. It gets more and more. And so this kind of tracks with the stuff that I was talking about earlier, in that at larger enterprises, you need design systems to help scale design because the ratio just grows. I wonder if there's a bell curve somewhere here as it gets to larger than the size. But again, this sort of tracks in terms of how many designers work at an organization and to how many engineers. A lot of the tech industry is engineering heavy. I know there are exceptions to that, but this kind of supports that data, or that theory. All right, design systems. We're a third of the way through, page 21 of 63. So design system teams are more likely in bigger organizations. Okay, we were just talking about that. Seems like they were leading up to this in this report. 61% have a team, 31% have a team with full employees, 30% have a team that's partially resourced. Right, so more likely at bigger organizations. Makes sense. Design system team size, 4 to 9 people. That's great. I've rarely worked with teams that have 10 or more people, and honestly, I'm not sure what you would do with a team of 10 or more people on a design system. That's not to say that there isn't that much work to do. There's a ton of work to do, but I find that larger than 10 people, you start to have the law of diminishing returns in terms of you trade efficiency problems for communication problems now, because now you have to keep everybody aligned, so I don't know that you gain any efficiencies over 10 people, but I'd be curious to talk to more people who are working on teams of design systems that have more than 10 people. I do find that this is the sweet spot. I like a team of 6, 6 to 8 generally, and this kind of tracks in that. Design system team size increases with company size. Okay, this is related to what we saw before about the designer engineer ratio. At 1,000 plus people, teams of 11 people. Again, so there's an interesting trend line here. It looks like 6 people. Yeah, interesting. I would imagine at an organization of 10 people, 6 of them are on a design system team. And that's probably because these 6 people aren't just exclusively on a design system team. They're probably doing design system work in addition to all the other kind of work there too. So I'd be curious to see, I wonder if this question was worded about exclusively on the design system as opposed to, I imagine that these people here are probably exclusively on a design system team, are not working on product teams or feature teams or anything like that. Whereas this is a little bit different. But I don't know. I wonder if that's represented in the data at all. Design system teams go beyond designers and developers. Cool. We saw this a little bit in the landing page as well. Your design system and documentation. Okay. All right, zeroheight. Your documentation platform. Let's see what you have to say and report. Design systems are gaining traction. Excellent. A bit self-serving here because of who zeroheight is, because of who I am, and because of who is responding to this. But good data nonetheless. Most design systems are 1 year old. A majority of design systems are under 3 years old. Safe to say, if you don't have a design system yet, not too late to start. Excellent. I agree. Documentation has become a natural part of the process. Where though? That's the thing that I'm interested in. 89% of design system docs are between 0 and 3 years old. The difference between starting your design system and documenting it is relatively low. Interesting. This year, 87% of design systems start documenting within 1 year of starting their design system. See, this worries me. I like this makes sense, but I don't like this. What I try to teach teams is, not within 1 year. Does that mean that within the first year, there's a time where you don't have documentation with your design system. That's terrible. That's awful. How do you expect people to use it and know how to use it? That's where I see a lot of design systems atrophy or just never get picked up because of the lack of documentation. I think there's easier ways to do documentation. So I'd be curious to see if that's part of this report somewhere in here. Code and code first tools are leading the charge. No surprise there, and very exciting. Note-taking tools, design tool itself. Okay, so my guess is, I wonder if they will name some of these tools in a couple of slides. But my guess here is that these are the Webflows and WordPresses of the world, and framers and things like that. I see a lot of people lately building their reference sites in those kinds of tools as opposed to a zeroheight, or actually I wonder if zeroheight and supernova and tools like that, I wonder if they count themselves as code and code first tools, or if they're one of these. Maybe they're more third-party design system managers or things like that. I'd be curious. Let's see if that's in here somewhere. Design tool itself, I imagine this refers to Figma. So you're designing in Figma, perhaps you document in Figma, or Storybook, something like that. Self-built solutions, I wonder where the trend line is on this one too. Self-built solutions, is that trending downward? Are people just now no longer spinning up their own, Gatsby sites or anything like that? I know I was doing a lot of that work the last couple of years ago. Now almost every design system I work on with a team tends to be, we spin up a zeroheight site or a supernova site or a Notion site, something like that, in order to work with documentation very quickly. So let's see if they name some of the tools here. There we go. There it is, the most popular documentation tools. The design tool itself. All right, so Figma, Sketch, XD. Storybook is next. Okay, so Storybook is part of that design tool. Next up, zeroheight, Confluence. Yep, self-built solutions, 15%. In-code documentation. I wonder if this is like README files or code comments or things like that. Again, with a lot of these, I wonder where the trend lines are. Are these increasing? Notion is a tool that people are using a lot now. There's a big renaissance in note-taking tools and things like that. So I wonder if we'll see more of that, more of the Notions, more of the Crafts or Obsidians or things like that in here. GitHub pages, again, wondering about trend lines for some of these tools. Tool combination bingo. Oh, I love this. I love that they introduced this and included this here. Like last year, organizations continue to use a combination of tools to get the job done. Our top combination this year is zeroheight and Storybook. Teams also rely on just their design tool in Storybook, even though not a specific design system documentation tool. Confluence is in combinations that round out the top 5. So this is something that I see a lot, and honestly, I encourage teams to do, especially as teams are larger, more on the enterprise side. The combination of tools is it's just realistic. I talk to a lot of tool makers that really want to be the one-stop shop for, we want to be the design system manager. There've been a lot of tools in the past that way, a lot of tools coming out in the future, and I'm just not hopeful for that. I don't think that one tool is going to do everything that has to be done in a design system really well, and I just don't think it's realistic to organizations. I like using tools that are small and well-built to do the job that they're supposed to do. No coincidence then that's how I like my design systems to be as well. I like small design systems that do the job really well. 20 components, 10 components that are awesome, I think is better than a design system that has 200 components that are not so awesome and not so well maintained, not so well contributed to, not so well adopted, anything like that. So this tool combination that fits much more in line with my style of how I like to work on design systems is combine the tools that work for you, even if the integrations aren't quite there. I think people are more resilient than that and will figure out their own solutions, whereas putting all your eggs in one basket is a bit tough from a tool standpoint. All right, very few have their systems 100% documented. That makes sense. It's hard. Documentation is hard if it's not part of the process, and I think part of good design system work is figuring out where it is in the process. So under 25% of the design systems document, 36% of respondents said that. Yeah, I think it's realistic. I wish it were more. I bet everybody wishes it were more, but this is cool to see kind of the reality of it. And what I like about reports like this is that I think it just helps people to understand what's normal. Because when design system teams work on design system stuff in a vacuum, they might feel really down on themselves for being like, only a quarter of our design systems documented. But it's the reality. You're not doing any worse than anybody else. Look at this. And for a lot of people that gives them comfort. You're not any worse. It could always be better, right? So there's always ways that you can make it better than this. Perhaps I wonder if in this report they get into process, where documentation lives in the process, and maybe even suggestions and recommendations. But this is a good reality slide. This is a good slide that says it's normal. It's okay to be here. You can always do better, but don't worry that, you're doing it worse than anybody else. This is a good normalization slide. What does your documentation include? Lots of stuff here. Color. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Atomic components, typography, brand guidelines, all the common stuff. Design tokens. Okay, cool. I'm not sure that I have a particular opinion about this slide or what it's saying to me, but good to see this lay of the land here. I may come back to this sometime in the future to figure out what this means for my work. Most of our documentation is monolingual. Yep, 80% do not localize. I think that makes sense. I think that's just where we are in design systems. It's hard to do two things well if you can't do one thing well. So I wonder if this will change in the future. Again, I wonder about trend lines here. I wonder if this is more than they found last year. I wonder if we'll find more in the coming years. But again, some trend lines would be cool to see in this in the next version of this report. Version control is a sign of maturity. 42% do not have version control. Interesting. I wonder how you could use a design system without version control. I mean, I guess I guess that those are, in the way that I talk about them, those are design systems as projects instead of design system as products. If you do a design system as a project, you make one, you finish it, you ship it, and then you use it for a while, I guess, and you don't improve it. And if you don't change anything, I guess you don't need version control. That seems like a risky proposition to me, especially with the amount of investment of work you have to put into design systems to get them up and running. But all right, again, this might be just a reality slide that this is where it is. This is where we're at. How people contribute to your design system documentation. Okay, good stuff here. About a third of respondents have a contribution model, and about a third are creating one. Of those that have a contribution model, very few have a model they feel is effective. That makes sense. Contribution models are hard because it's process stuff. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Hopefully we get into some more process stuff here, but we are getting into it. I think it's because people don't know when to document or where. And when I said where earlier, I didn't mean where physically, like what tool. I mostly meant when. So that's probably a better way to describe it. When do you document? And if you get that question, if you get the answer to that question wrong, documentation becomes hard to do. What a lot of people do is they get the when wrong because they say, first we'll make the components and then we will document after we're done. And that's the wrong place that I've found to do it because you never get to it. You always save it to the end and you just generally don't get to the stuff that you save to the end because there's always some new priority that crops up that is more important. So we need better ways to make documentation important to us. Otherwise, we're going to see stuff like this. We have a contribution model, but it's not very effective. Which says to me, we have some theories about where documentation should go and when it should happen, but it's not proven. It's not actually part of our process quite yet. Who documents your systems? Ooh, okay. 88% designers, 41% engineers, 3% documentation specialists. Okay, this is such a juicy slide. I love this. To me, this is right. This is that, if designers are the ones making and using the system or engineers are the ones making and using the system, they should be the one to document. I know a lot of teams have this hope. They go like, one day we'll bring in a writer or a content strategist or a documentation specialist who, if you have the luxury of doing that, do that. That's awesome. There's just not a lot of these people out there. And of the people that are, they are so in demand. Everyone that the few that I know that I talk to are always busy doing stuff. And rightly so, it's an important thing. So for the teams, the 97% of teams that don't have this role, what do you do? Because these people are generally overworked already. So to add documentation to their task just feels like adding another bucket on top of it, which means it'll never get done. So let's see what they say. Designers are the people who most contribute to documentation. With content people at 18%, this could imply that organizations are taking documentation seriously and ensuring that there's a good experience with it. That's a good glass half full version of it. The glass half empty version of it is that it's only 18%. If they were taking it more seriously, wouldn't we see this number be higher? But again, that could just be a point in time. So When looking at things a little deeper, the distribution of who documents is relatively even across org size. Larger organizations usually have more content people contributing to documentation. So to me, this is I think most organizations, I think this is an accurate thing. I think that this shows and kind of proves how people are doing it poorly, which is that I think people think in organizations, they we just need to throw more people at this problem. And I don't think it's a people problem. I think it's a process problem. If it's in the right spot in the process, then documentation becomes much easier. If it's at the wrong spot, then you need to staff augment. They need to go, let's just bring on people to take that job away from the designers and engineers who are already doing it. And while that might be good, now you're increasing communication problems because just more people to keep aligned. So again, I wonder if there's more process stuff in here, but this makes sense to me. This is not a zeroheight problem. This is an organization problem. Zeroheight is just reporting what they're finding, but I think it's a process challenge. Governance isn't as common. Yep. This year, only 40% have a governance process. Most respondents, 29%, are working on creating a process now. We're not surprised since many respondents said that their design systems were just a year old. As you can imagine, getting a design system up and running has to happen before teams can establish a governance process for documentation. I strongly disagree with that. I understand this. It makes sense, but I think it's counterintuitive. The actual answer is counterintuitive. I think that if you get your design system up and running and then you go, we'll do governance at the end, you never get to it. So I think this is a good thing for pilots. Piloting design systems mean you're doing things in the process to figure out how to do them better in the future. Like a TV pilot, we make one episode, so we figure out how to make future episodes, right? You want to figure a bunch of things out in that first episode. So the first time you use a design system, you want to figure things out. You don't want to defer things and say, yeah, we'll just leave that we'll just leave governance till the end. We'll leave documentation till the end, because that stuff doesn't get done. And so it always keeps getting pushed off. So what I recommend to all teams is let's work out governance the first time we do a design system. And if it's still left for the end, okay, well, what you can do now is the next time we use our design system, let's tackle governance in that. It's not a separate process. I think that when I work with teams who treat governance as a separate process, it never gets done. So you have to treat it as part of the design system work. Not many have content guidelines for their documentation. That makes sense. I mean, you don't even have documentation. Why would you have content guidelines for that documentation? All right, measuring the success of your documentation. 10% of respondents track metrics on their documentation. Yeah, it's hard. There's not a lot of metrics. There's not a lot of tools for tracking metrics. However, 17% of respondents are working toward measuring. Even if not tracking metrics, more respondents have KPIs directly associated with the success of their documentation. That makes sense. I think the tooling there is just lacking. Hopefully, places like zeroheight are going to come out with better information about that and better tools to use in terms of tracking, but it's a tough one. Adoption is the key concern. Of those who have KPIs, adoption was ranked the highest. This year, we added product consistency, speed of design delivery, and speed of development as options, as they all ranked high. Net Promoter Score, NPS, as a KPI ranked the lowest. Interesting NPS fact there. I think NPS generally is decreasing in terms of how much people are looking to it as a useful metric. But this still feels a little bit shallow to me. I get it. I see this in my own work that a lot of people are so focused on adoption. I think adoption is still a means to an end. So, a lot of this stuff is important, but it's important to every design system. And so to me, because of that, it's too universal. It's too generic. I like to see a lot more different metrics. I have a new video coming out about metrics in general. I'll talk about it more there. But to me, this is the tip of the iceberg. So for this to be the key concern, I think lots of teams are missing things. That said, it makes sense that before you can track things that are more important, let's do the base level stuff. But again, back to another point, if you leave something till the end, it generally doesn't get done. So lots to say about that. That'll be in a new video, but adoption as a key concern leaves a lot on the table. Design tokens continue to emerge. Cool. Lots of people are interested in design tokens. I have a bit of a hot take around design tokens. I think design tokens are an advanced topic, whereas I think a lot of people see them as a foundational topic. And so because they see them as that, they want to do them first. And I almost always do them later. And I know I'm kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth here to say, if we leave something until the end, it doesn't get done. I see design tokens as a thing that if it doesn't get done, that's okay. You can always do it later. You're always going to have to retrofit anyway. And so I leave design tokens to the end because they're hard, because you spend a lot of time doing it up front because they are so far reaching. So it's cool to see teams that are using design tokens more and more. A lot of times, depending on where you are in your design system lifecycle, that could just be a distraction. Defining the 5 to 7 design tokens is a sweet spot for a design system. I love this. I said this from the landing page. This is the way to do it if you're going to do design tokens up front. I think what I see distract teams is they try to build a monolith, a monster of a design token architecture. We have to have hundreds and hundreds of tokens. And so if that's the way that you're doing it first, I go do that later. But for teams that are like, let's just define 5 to 7 tokens, I think that's awesome. That shows that a team can have discipline and say, we're not going to boil the ocean. We're not going to bite off more that we can chew. I don't know how many more metaphors I have about this. But essentially that this is something that shows that a team can just say, like, we're just going to work on an MVP, a minimum viable product of what we need, and we can kind of grow from there. To me, that's a great sign for a team. So kudos to the team that are using 5 to 7 design tokens as a starting point, as a sweet spot. And if they, not even just a starting point, but a stopping point, that's pretty impressive. So I would love to meet more of you who are doing that. But where are design tokens defined? Oh boy. Design tools, yep, not great. Code, yep, not great. Token management platform, yeah, not great. So, and I say not great not because that's not where they're supposed to be, but tooling just isn't there yet. Design tokens in Figma are coming. They're on their way, but natively they're not there. There's some good plugins for that, which are awesome. But again, the process isn't figured out, and because they're not native, it's a tough thing right now, the state of tooling for design tokens. Same thing with code. A lot of the design tokens in code that I've seen teams that I've worked with use are generally homegrown. So maybe they'll use something that's a bit more established and defined and documented, like Style Dictionary from Danny Banks. Some teams kind of create their own version of Style Dictionary or Theo, and they do their own version. But what happens with them eventually is if they're homegrown, who's around to maintain them once the person who made it is off to another project? So that's tough. So to me, and of course I'm biased here, I created a design token management platform. I no longer work on it. It was called Arcade. But I think this token management platforms are the way to do this. It's just really hard. So I wonder who's going to get there in terms of tooling, whether it's a zeroheight or a supernova or lots of different tools that are coming out lately in design systems. This is a hard problem right now because the tooling isn't very mature in our industry. Design tokens and continuous integration. No, 31% no. What's the no? What is the question that they're answering no to? It's about even for those who have a continuous integration with design tokens. No, they do not have continuous integration. Well, that's a problem because that's the whole value of design tokens is that it is part of your pipeline and part of the process of work. I'm encouraged to see not yet, but trying. All right, that's in here. Cool. So the answer is no, but a bunch of people are getting there. Yes from design to code. That's encouraging too. This is the thing that we are looking for. Syncs both ways. To me, whoever cracks round tripping with design tokens, they win. Because that's the thing that allows it to be part of process. It's not an export thing. It's not a create design tokens and export them and then everybody use them. Because design systems, to me, what they're for, where they prove their most value, is at the points of change. So when things change, that's when you want to take advantage of systems. And so if design tokens are a set and forget thing, well then at the points of change you're going to forget about them. You're not going to know how to use them. So it needs to be part of the process. So this I would love to see this trend upwards over the next coming years, and I think that'll be a good sign that we are really creating scalable and flexible systems as an industry. What are the hallmarks of mature design system documentation? 36% each. Each what? This year, mid-sized companies have more mature systems than mid-large size companies. Mid-size companies have more mature systems. Maybe this means than large size companies. This tells us smaller companies might be a little bit more nimble in getting their system to a mature state. That's interesting. It would make sense because if you're a smaller company, you need a smaller system, and then you can get it up and running faster. And again, that's the strategy that I generally encourage, even for big companies. Create a small system, you can get it up and running faster. Work like a startup. Work like a more nimble, place. An agency or a smaller team, because then you can separate the creation problem from the scale problem. that's what these companies don't have to do, is they don't have to do the scale problem. They don't have to tackle that. These companies do, but they try to do it all in one, which becomes overwhelming. We got to create a design system at scale. Well, no, first create a design system, then scale it. There are two separate efforts. And so how can these companies be working more like these companies? Be curious to see that. 51% have version control, 61% have a contribution model. So these are mature design systems have this, yes, but very few companies actually do have that. Design systems bring consistency, speed, and efficiency. This is the boring stuff to me. I hate these things. I think this is the tip of the iceberg, and I think that people look to these as the end state of design systems. I'm like, no, those are the beginning states of design systems. Think about the current state. Thinking about their current design systems. Our respondents overwhelmingly agree on these benefits. 86% mentioned that it makes their product more consistent. Cool. 81% noted it increases the efficiency of their designers. Okay. 71% mentioned it makes their product portfolio more consistent. Okay. These are all like navel-gazy. These are all. I mean, I don't mean to be so pessimistic about it, but these all have to do with the company. But how does this help end users and end customers? Right? That's the tie that I find missing when people just focus on these kinds of design system metrics. Is it's so inward focused. It's not outward focused. It's not in terms of the benefits. These are good things. I'm not saying these aren't good things. Increasing the speed of product development, making collaboration more seamless between designers and developers. I wonder if there's a slide here that says and this is how it actually affected our end customers. We were able to ship better product to them. We were able to help them do things that they couldn't do otherwise. And our design system is a tool that helps us do that. That's implied here, but it's not stated. And I think because it's not stated, it just gets lost a lot of times. Documentation is great for truth, onboarding, and confidence. Serves as a single source of truth. Yeah, I have some opinions about single source of truth. I don't think that any one tool should be a single source of truth. I think the people and the process are the source of truth. So, and I get it. Zeroheight is a documentation tool. They would want their product to be source of truth. I just don't think that belongs with any tool because tools go away after a while, and they evolve and they change. And so do people and processes, but I think those are the more important things to keep in sync because tools can go away and it's okay. When people go away, it's not okay. When process goes away, it's not okay, or at least less okay. So anyway, hot take there. Your design system and happiness. Okay, seems like there's the last section in here. Design system teams need a hug. Aw, sweet. Overall happiness with their documentation is split across respondents. The most happy and neither happy or unhappy sentiments were tied. So people are thrilled or not. Interesting. Why? Let's see why. Happiness and documentation maturity. Most respondents noted that their design system documentation was partially mature. About a fifth felt their documentation was mature. When comparing maturity with documentation happiness, we're not surprised with our findings. Okay, I'm not sure what that's saying. I'm going to skip it. Let's move on. Is happiness related to being in-house? Oh, wow. That's a question. Agency people are the happiest bunch. No way. That is surprising to me. I don't know that I disagree with that or anything, but in-house people are the lowest bunch. I would imagine self-employed would be highest and not necessarily related to design systems at all, but just, I don't know, lifestyle, work-life balance. I'm not sure. The happiness sentiment was evenly distributed between happy, unhappy, and neutral for in-house folks. So I wonder if happiness is just like your job or your workplace has no effect on happiness. I don't know. Let's move on and see. Happiness in your design system. People with full-time dedicated teams indicate slightly more happiness compared to those with partially resourced teams. Okay, so here's my hypothesis. My hypothesis originally was that people who have more focus are happier. But this last slide, if we go back, this kind of flies in the face of that because generally agency work is very scattered. It's a lack of focus, in lots of agencies where people are working on multiple projects very fast. And while there is excitement to that generally, especially for people who thrive at agencies, as opposed to people who work in-house, that kind of defeats my focus hypothesis. So let's see what else. How much is covered in a happy design system? In a happy design system, at least 70% is documented, and that seems to be 60% of respondents in this. Yeah, it makes sense. If you feel like you're making progress, you're happier, and so 75% of documentation, there's clearly some progress that's happened there. Okay, makes sense. Happiness and contribution. Again, I think this goes to the same thing. We're making progress. We're really happy. We don't even have a contribution model, no progress, lack of happiness. I don't know that that's very surprising. Happiness in government, same thing here. Yes, we have a formal review process. We are doing something well, and that makes people happy. Happiness in design system governance, centralized, hybrid, federated. Interesting. I wonder what this is saying. Happiness seems to strongly correlate to having a centralized or hybrid governance model in place. So if there's a central model, people are happy. If there's a hybrid model, people are happy. If there's a federated model, people are not happy. I wonder if that's because this is the most difficult to define and to create just definitions about. I work with a lot of teams that are like, they create ambassador programs, they create federated models, and they always are like, in those models, the people on any side of that are like, what's my job again? What am I supposed to be doing? Who am I supposed to be doing it with? So lots of questions here. Maybe it's because these are more defined. I think this one's more successful, but perhaps more difficult. So I wonder if there's some proportion that plays out there. More time leads to more happiness. Documenting is the majority of my time. Yeah, this to me again goes to the focus thing, where it's like when people have a focus and they're like, I can just concentrate on this thing. I think they're more happy because maybe they can make more progress and see more progress, as opposed to being very scattered. And certainly I might be projecting my own current woes on this too. I find that I am more happy when I am focused in my work, when I'm doing one or two things, not necessarily 11 or 12 things. So perhaps I'm projecting here. People using third-party DSMs are happier. I mean, sure, it's hard not to spot the bias in this slide. Of course, zeroheight would say this, because they are a third-party design system manager. So not trying to call them on anything, but I can't help but notice the bias in the slide, to see how much I actually believe it. And that's a wrap. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. Zeroheight, thank you for making a report like this. This is awesome to see. I think, more data helps everyone. And thank you for tracking it all. Thanks to all of you for watching. If you like videos like this, let me know. I'll make more of these. I like learning from these, and so I figured I'd just record them in case anybody else wants to see how I walk through these. If you like them, let me know. Post in the comments, and let me know what kind of other videos you'd like to see. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.